So this is a really cool use of AppScript and Google Sheets to essentially create a database, and then we're going to create our own API where we're going to check the status of a job. This is great if you're managing projects, if you're a product manager, and you want to create essentially a place on the web for someone to check certain jobs, but you maybe give them an ID and you don't want them to see everything in the sheet. So what you might be doing now is like using a couple of different Google Sheets and saying, hey, we'll give you import range, or we'll give you some filter on this data, and trying to hide this data. But this way, when we're going to create an API, and it's not as hard as you think, because we're going to access AppScript and we're going to create a get function here, which is built into AppScript and gives us a lot of functionality, and we're going to deploy a web app. It's really, really quick, unbelievably easy. I'm going to show you how to write this code, and if you're watching this on bettersheets.co, you can get this code down below. You can get this exact sheet. But let me show you how it works first. So we have two columns, a job and a status. We have IDs, or we could have any text, any unique text here. And this unique text is going to be read by our checker here. This is a card. I'm using CARRD to create just a form online at a URL, and it's just a form that checks for this. So we see job 1 over here. So let's look at for job 1, check it, and what do we get in response? So we got an error. It's actually because we need to use incognito mode. If we are the logged in user, it sort of errors out, but this is great for giving access to other people. So we're going to use an incognito mode right now. We're going to enter job, and we're going to hit check. And what the response should be is done, right? And what does it give us? Up here you can see done. So we go back. Let's check number 9, and the response should be in progress. And so let's see, does it do it? Yes, we get in progress. So now we can check jobs if we just know the ID. We can also change this ID to something like new job or delta job, delta. And if we enter delta, we didn't change anything in the AppScript, we just changed the sheet and the data itself. Let's check for delta and see what we get in response. We get in progress. See, it's checking the data live, and we've set up the API, we've set up the front end, and this is unbelievably easy. We're just going to do this in a few minutes. So let's get started. If you have never used AppScript before, this is a pretty advanced use of AppScript, and we need some data here. So follow along if you can. If you haven't, take a look at Spreadsheet Automation 101 on bettersheets.co, or Master Spreadsheet Automation, which includes Spreadsheet Automation 101, and it gets you up to speed on AppScript, but this video just shows you a really cool example of it. So we're going to go to extensions AppScript, and that's here. I'm just going to rewrite this here again for you as I would write it myself, and then we're going to delete it. But we're going to do function do get. This function is a built-in trigger, so we don't have to do anything. We just need to make sure we get this correct, that it's do get with a capital G. We have the curly brackets as well, and we need some input. So what this URL is doing, we're going to deploy to a URL, is we're going to have some piece of data that is attached to that URL, and that, in this case, we're going to call it E. We can call it anything we want. This is a variable we can call. We can call this data or job, but that might be a little confusing. So I'm just going to call it E. This is very typical in AppScript for event, or shorthand for event. What we're going to need first is a variable called job, and we're going to get e.parameter.job. Why job here? Because we're going to add to this URL. We're going to add to the URL that we get. You'll see the API. Question mark job equals, and then we're going to have this check. You'll see this later on. What we need to do is we need to look for all of these statuses and say, hey, based on this parameter that we get, this variable, we need to go and get the status for it. So we're going to do const statuses. We're just calling it statuses because it's all of the statuses in one array. Spreadsheet app.get active spreadsheet. If you're typing this yourself, you have to add these parentheses. Get sheet by name. We can actually put this on a new line if we want. We're going to do get sheet by name. The name of the sheet we have here is statuses. You can name it whatever you want. We're going to call it statuses. And this allows us to get just that sheet. We're going to now get the last row of that sheet, because we need to know how many things are in here, equals statuses, which is this variable right here, dot get last row. That's all we need. Let's follow along here. Now we're going to grab all of the jobs. We're going to do exactly the same thing we did here with statuses, but we're going to get the jobs. And these are the job IDs or job numbers here. And we're going to add a little bit more, but we're going to do spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. We can use the autocomplete here to do that. Get sheet by name. We're using statuses. Same. We're also going to get the range, and the range is going to start at row 1, column 1, and it's going to go however many rows we have. So last row is our variable for last row, and then we only want one column. But what we need to make sure is in this array we get the values. Now we need all of the statuses. So this actually allows us, the statuses allows us to delete all of this, add statuses in there. That might be a little bit easier to read, that we're grabbing the statuses page, we're getting the range, the first column up until the very last row, and we're getting all the values. We can copy this and paste it and use it for status array. We can call this job array or jobs, whatever we want. And instead of getting the first column, we get the second column. So now we're getting both pieces of data. We're getting whichever column we want, which is the first column to look at what's the ID. Then we're getting the data we want, which is the statuses array. Okay. Now we're going to create a little for loop. We're going to create I equals 0. We're going to do I is less than jobs.length, because we want to check through all of the jobs. I++, because we want to iterate one time. And each time we iterate, we're going to say if jobs, in brackets I, which is the way to indicate each line individually, and if that's equal to job, meaning the parameter we got in the URL, well, what do we want to do? We want to say, hey, give us a status. So we do variable output equals statuses array I. So it's the exact same row as the one that's matching that job. And now we go down to the bottom and we say return. And normally in a function that we're writing in AppScript without the do-get, if we're just creating a function, we're just going to say return output. But we're using do-get and we're going to create basically an output, text output to the web. So we can't just return the output. We need to do this a little bit something different, which is content service. So content service dot create text output and then put output in there. So again, normally a normal function in Google Sheets that stays in Google Sheets, we wouldn't have to do this content service create text output, but we have to do that now because we want it to go out to the web. Okay, I'm going to delete all of this. And we'll see if we made any errors here, because we're going to try this out. We're going to deploy, new deployment. We're going to select myself to run it. Anyone can run it. Hit deploy. We're going to get a unique URL from this. Now we have set up essentially an API that exists on the cloud, and it's this URL that allows us to access it. So how do we test this? We're going to go to Postman. And we're going to test this. Here in Postman, we have our URL. This is our web app URL. And we want to test with a key, which we've created the key here, if you haven't noticed yet. And maybe I didn't say it. But job, J-O-B. This is the parameter we want to add to our URL. So that's going to be our key. We're going to write in job. And what's the value? Let's do 1. This is the very first one. We should get a status done. Now we can send that. And we should get a request, a return back. Done. Perfect. It's working absolutely perfectly. Now let's create a front end. We're going to do that in card. So in card, all I have to do, I'm using a blank thing here. I'm going to create a brand new one. You see it here. I'm going to create a brand new one called a form. We're going to select the type custom. We want to send to URL because our API is just a URL. Paste in exactly that same web app. If you lose it, you can go back to deploy, manage deployments. This, I think, is the second deployment. Here it is. It's just going to be a list of all of the deployments. It's going to be the last one, the latest one here. If you lose it, there it is. We're going to change the method to get. And then over on the fields, we want a enter job ID. The text, the type is going to be text. The ID, again, same parameter we added here in our code, JOB, job. That's going to add that job equals to the URL. We're going to change the submit to enter. So you see which one of these is different. We can actually delete this one. And this is the one we are now checking. We hit done. And all we have to do is save this, publish it. We're publishing it to a unique card subdomain. You are more than welcome to try it out yourself there, or if you have your own website, you can get it there. So we have now updated our website. There it is. And again, we're going to enter 2, let's say, enter. And let's see what we get. We get done. Perfect. And if that status has changed, if number 2 is like, hey, review, let's go back and see what that might look like. Now, hit enter 2. Wait for a moment. Ooh, do you have the patience to wait? We're waiting. And it is now review. So now this is great. We can create this API so quickly, right? Less than 15 minutes. It's been 12 minutes. We've done this. We now have an API that works, that gets this data from the sheet. What else? How else can we use this? Well, if we create a brand new sheet, let's go sheet.new. And we're like, hey, I want that data in the sheet. I don't want to use import range. I don't want to have any trace back to this sheet, right? If you use import range, you have to allow access. You need to show the URL of this sheet. I don't want any trace of it. But I don't want to have to do this front end kind of thing. Well, what can we do? We can do equals import data. And this allows us to add a URL here. And we're going to do and B1, and we're going to say if is blank B1. If it's actually blank, don't do anything. But if it's not blank, if there's something there, then we're going to add this this URL. We're going to go to it. We're going to import that data. We're going to have to add a question mark, JOB equals, and we're going to look for the answer to that. So right now it is blank. I'm going to put in 1. It says loading there. Now this is similar to import range. I do have to allow access, but this is really cool because the URL that I'm using is not necessarily connected to that sheet. No one's going to be able to know this script URL is connected to that sheet. And now we have a checker right here. So we can change this to 2. Let's see, that'll load. And it is in review. So again, we have a front end possible if we want to with card and using any kind of form and buttons here. But over here on the left side, we can put this into a Google Sheet and create our own front end if we want to. And we can hit delete, and it shows nothing. If we have 45, let's see, it probably gives some kind of error, NA. So if we can always add an if NA around it. And there we go. Or some message. It might want some message. Not applicable. It might say instead of an error, it's like not available or not found. Let's do that. Now, if we do 4, should show up. There you go. Done. And we're done with our status job checker. This is really exciting. I really love this kind of stuff. We're using Google Sheets in a completely new and different way. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are a Better Sheets member and watching this on Better Sheets, then you can get down below. If you're not watching this on Better Sheets, become a member and get the sheet. Or this is probably going to be added on Udemy as well. But yeah, if you're a Better Sheets member, go and grab the sheet down below. You get this code written for you. And the card is super simple. It is just a basic card with a form. There.